My name's Eva, and I grew up in what you might call an ordinary family. But let me tell you, there was nothing ordinary about how things played out. From the day I was born, I was the second fiddle in my parents' orchestra. My older brother, Tom, was their golden child, the apple of their eye. They had big dreams for him. He was going to take over our family's Chinese porcelain business and make it big. Me? I was just there. Tom got all the attention, all the praise, all the newest gadgets. Latest iPhone? Tom had it. Newest gaming console? Tom's. Cool party invitation? Tom's going. Me? I was lucky if I got Tom's hand-me-downs or a babysitter for the night. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't hate my parents or even Tom. I just didn't understand them. They were always trying to be something they weren't: richer, smarter, more important. It was all about appearances with them. Eva, stand up straight, Mom would hiss at family gatherings. And for goodness sake, smile. What will people think? I'd plaster on a fake smile and count the minutes until I could escape to my room. The only bright spot in all this was my grandparents, Mom's parents. They lived in a cozy little house across town, and visiting them was like stepping into another world. With them, I felt seen, loved. It was the only place I felt I could truly be myself. When Tom graduated high school, it was a big to-do. My parents threw a lavish party, invited all their important friends, and announced proudly that Tom would be attending some fancy-pants college they'd handpicked for him. Our boy's going places, Dad boasted, clapping Tom on the back. He'll make the family proud. Tom went to college, and I stayed at home. It's been a few years, and I researched schools, picked out a program I was passionate about. All I had to do was tell my parents. The next day, I gathered my courage and approached them at breakfast. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I've decided on the college I want to attend." They looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "College?" Dad scoffed. "You?" Mom laughed, a high, fake sound that set my teeth on edge. "Oh, Eva, don't be silly. You don't need college, you'll work in the shop with us." "But I want to study," I started, but Dad cut me off. "We're not wasting money on your education," he said firmly. "That money's going towards Tom's new car." I stood there, shocked into silence. Then Mom delivered the final blow. "Face it, Eva," she said, not unkindly, but with a patronizing smile. "You're just not college material. You'll be much happier in the shop." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All my dreams, all my hard work, meant nothing to them. I ran from the room, tears streaming down my face, and did the only thing I could think of. I called my grandparents. Tears streaming down my face, I could barely get the words out. "Grandma, they said I'm not college material," I sobbed into the phone. There was a moment of silence, then Grandpa's voice came on the line, firm and angry. "Pack your bags, Eva. We're coming to get you." An hour later, I was throwing clothes into a suitcase when my parents burst into my room. "What do you think you're doing?" Mom demanded. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice shaky but determined. Dad scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. Where would you go?" Just then, the doorbell rang. I heard Grandpa's booming voice downstairs, and a wave of relief washed over me. "She's coming with us," Grandpa said as he appeared in my doorway, Grandma right behind him. "Now wait just a minute," Dad started, but Grandpa cut him off. "Eva's 18. She can live wherever she damn well pleases," he growled, "and right now she pleases to live with us." Mom tried to argue, but I was already hauling my suitcase down the stairs. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. I thought I'd feel sad, but all I felt was free. That night, over a home-cooked dinner, my grandparents laid out their plan. "We've been saving for years," Grandma said, reaching for my hand. "We always knew you were destined for great things, Eva. We want to pay for your college." And just like that, my life changed. I enrolled in the college of my dreams, ready to tackle whatever came my way. Every month, without fail, a small amount of money would appear in my account for accommodation, the note always said. I threw myself into my studies with a passion I never knew I had. Late nights in the library, heated debates in class, projects that challenged me in ways I'd never been challenged before. I loved every minute of it. One day, after presenting a particularly difficult project, my professor pulled me aside. "Eva, I'm impressed," she said, a rare smile on her usually stern face. "How would you like to intern at Stellar Corp this summer?" My jaw dropped. Stellar Corp was the most prestigious company in the city. Everyone wanted to work there. Are you serious?" I stammered. She nodded. "I'm recommending you personally, don't let me down." I practically floated out of the classroom. Me, Eva, the girl who was not college material, landing an internship at Stellar Corp. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The future was wide open, and I was ready to grab it with both hands. I was in my 3rd year of college when the unexpected call came. My older brother Tom had already graduated and landed a job. He'd been bragging about some big promotion, and now my parents, who had hardly spoken to me in years, suddenly wanted me to come home to share in Tom's success. I spent the next few days debating whether to go. Part of me wanted to stay away, to protect the life I'd built for myself. But another part, well, maybe things had changed, maybe they finally saw me differently. In the end, I decided to go. What's the worst that could happen, right? I arrived at my old house on Friday evening, feeling like a stranger as I walked up the familiar driveway. Mom answered the door, all smiles and air kisses. I'd just finished unpacking when I heard the front door open, and Tom's voice drift up the stairs. "Mom, Dad, we're here." Curious, I headed downstairs. Tom was standing in the living room, his arm around a pretty blonde girl I'd never seen before. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sarah," Tom announced, beaming, "my fiancée." Mom let out a squeal that could have shattered glass, while Dad pumped Tom's hand enthusiastically. I stood on the sidelines, feeling like an outsider at a party I hadn't been invited to. "It's nice to meet you," I said to Sarah, who smiled warmly at me. "You must be Eva. Tom's told me so much about you." I doubted that, but I appreciated the effort. As we all sat down, the story came out. Tom and Sarah had been dating all through college, and now that they'd graduated, they'd decided to tie the knot. "So Sarah," Mom said, leaning forward eagerly, "tell us about your family. What do your parents do?" Sarah smiled. "Oh, they're in business. They own a chain of high-end boutiques across the country." I swear I could see dollar signs light up in my parents' eyes. Dad puffed up like a peacock. "Well, we're thrilled to welcome you to the family," he declared. "Now about the wedding. I think we should spare no expense. In fact, I'd be happy to cover half the cost myself." I nearly choked on my drink. Half the wedding costs? This from the man who wouldn't spend a dime on my college education. "That's very generous," Sarah said, looking a bit uncomfortable. "But really, there's no need." "Nonsense," Dad boomed. "We want this to be the event of the season. Nothing but the best for my son and his bride." I caught Tom's eye across the room. He looked embarrassed? Uncomfortable? It was hard to tell. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. As the evening wore on, the wedding plans grew more and more extravagant. A 5-star venue, gourmet catering, designer dresses. My parents were going all out to impress Sarah's family. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of raised voices downstairs. Groaning, I dragged myself out of bed and crept down the stairs, curious about what new drama was unfolding. Tom and Sarah were standing in the living room, a sleek folder in Sarah's hands. My parents sat on the couch, looking confused. "What do you mean?" another city dad was saying, his face turning an alarming shade of red. Sarah opened the folder, revealing glossy photos of a stunning beach resort. "We've always dreamed of a destination wedding," she explained, her voice excited. "Look at this place, it's perfect." I watched as my father's eyes bulged at the price list Sarah handed him. This is ridiculous," he spluttered. "It's 3 times what we discussed." "But Dad," Tom argued, "you said you wanted the best. This is the best." Dad stood up, his fists clenched. "I meant the best in our hometown, where our friends can attend. Who's going to travel across the country for your wedding?" Our friends will, Sarah said softly, looking hurt. The argument escalated quickly. Dad insisted on a local wedding, while Tom and Sarah stood their ground on the destination plan. I stood in the corner, feeling like I was watching a tennis match, my head swiveling back and forth between the two sides. Finally, Dad exploded. Enough. It's either a wedding here the way I want it, or you're on your own. The room fell silent. Tom's face hardened, a look I'd never seen before. Fine, he said coldly, we'll do it on our own. With that, he grabbed Sarah's hand and stormed out, slamming the door behind them. Dad collapsed onto the couch, his face in his hands. Mom fluttered around him, murmuring soothing words. I stood there awkwardly, not sure what to do. I'm going to head back to college, I said quietly. Neither of them responded. I packed my bags and left, grateful to escape the tension-filled house. Back at college, I threw myself into my studies, trying to forget the family drama. Weeks turned into months and life went on. I was deep into my final project when I got the call that changed everything. Is this Eva Thompson? A formal voice asked. Yes, that's me, I replied, my heart racing. This is Mr. Johnson from Johnson Associates law firm. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your grandparents, Robert and Margaret Thompson, were in a car accident 3 days ago. I'm sorry to inform you that they didn't survive. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My grandparents. Gone? It couldn't be true. They were the only ones who had ever truly believed in me, supported me. And now... Miss Thompson, the lawyer's voice brought me back to reality. There's something else we need to discuss. Your grandparents will. I listened in a daze as Mr. Johnson explained that I was the sole beneficiary. My grandparents had left me everything, their cozy house, their savings, everything. I sat on my bed after the call ended, trying to process it all. Grief for my grandparents warred with disbelief over my inheritance. I was now the owner of a house and had a substantial amount of money in the bank. The dust had barely settled on my grandparents' funeral when the vultures started circling. I was still trying to process my grief when Tom showed up at my door, all smiles and fraternal love. Eva, sis, he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that felt about as genuine as a $3 bill. How you holding up? I stepped back, eyeing him warily. I'm managing. What are you doing here, Tom? He sauntered into my apartment like he owned the place, making himself comfortable on my couch. Well, I heard about Grandma and Grandpa's will. That's quite a windfall you got there, huh? And there it was. I crossed my arms, already knowing where this was heading. Look, Eva, Tom said, his voice taking on that wheedling tone I knew all too well. Sarah and I, we're still trying to put together our dream wedding, and now that you've come into some money. I cut him off. No, Tom, I'm not paying for your wedding. His face fell, then hardened. Come on, Eva. Don't be selfish. It's not like you earned that money. We all know you were just sucking up to them to get their money. The accusation hit me like a slap in the face. How dare you, I hissed. I loved them. They were the only ones who ever believed in me. Yeah, because you played them like a fiddle. Tom was on his feet now, shouting, Poor little Eva, so neglected. Give me a break. At least I'm not a spoiled brat who thinks the world owes him a fancy wedding, I shot back. We went back and forth, hurling accusations and old grievances at each other. Years of resentment and hurt came pouring out. By the time Tom stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I was shaking with anger and hurt. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A few days later, my phone exploded with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Apparently my parents had been busy. How could you be so selfish, Eva? Your poor brother just wants a nice wedding. I always knew you were trouble. The messages went on and on. I called my parents, demanding an explanation. Well, what did you expect? Mom sniffed, refusing to help your own brother. It's shameful. You didn't want to pay for his ridiculous wedding either, I reminded her. That's different, Dad chimed in. We're his parents. You're just being greedy with your inheritance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Greedy? I worked my ass off in college while you two showered Tom with everything he wanted. Watch your language, young lady, Mom scolded. This is exactly why we always preferred Tom. He knows how to behave in polite society. Over the next few weeks, the family divide grew wider. Invitations to family events stopped coming. My cousins unfriended me on social media. It was like I'd been erased from the family tree overnight. At first it hurt. A lot. But as the days went by, I started to feel relieved. No more pretending, no more walking on eggshells, no more feeling like the family disappointment. I threw myself into my studies with renewed vigor. I had 1 semester left, and I was determined to graduate with honors. My grandparents had believed in me, had given me this amazing gift. I wasn't about to let them down. The day I graduated from college should have been one of the happiest of my life. Instead, I felt empty. There was no one in the audience cheering for me, no proud parents taking photos, no celebratory dinner afterwards. I collected my diploma and went home alone. The next few weeks were a blur of job applications and interviews. I was determined to make something of myself, to prove to everyone, especially myself, that I was worth something. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed with a message from Tom. I nearly dropped it in shock. Hey Eva, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I'm getting married next month. It would mean a lot if you could come. Call me. I stared at the message for a long time before finally hitting the call button. Eva, Tom's voice was hesitant. Thanks for calling. Look, I messed up. I've been thinking a lot about how I treated you, how we all treated you. I was a spoiled brat, and I'm sorry. I was stunned into silence. You're my sister, Eva, he continued. You and our whole family, you're important to me. I want everyone there for my big day. Please say you'll come. I felt a lump in my throat. I'll think about it, I managed to say before hanging up. The day of the wedding arrived, and I found myself standing outside an elegant hotel, clutching an expensive gift and feeling like I was about to walk into the lion's den. The venue was stunning. Flowers everywhere, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. For a moment I felt underdressed in my simple cocktail dress. I spotted Tom across the room, looking dashing in his tuxedo. Taking a deep breath, I made my way over to him. Congratulations, I said, forcing a smile. Tom's face lit up. Eva, you came. He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment I let myself believe that everything might be okay. We chatted for a few minutes and I started to relax. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Then I saw them. Mom and Dad, making their grand entrance. Mom was dripping in jewelry, Dad in a tux that looked like it cost more than my monthly rent. They swept into the room like royalty, greeting guests with air kisses and condescending smiles. Oh darling, my son's wedding is just divine, I overheard Mom saying to another guest. Of course we spared no expense. Only the best for our Tom. I had to stifle a laugh. Same old Mom and Dad, always putting on a show. As the evening wore on, I did my best to avoid them, sticking to the edges of the room and making small talk with distant relatives who didn't seem to remember our falling out. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way Mom kept glancing at me, the hushed conversations that stopped when I walked by. It was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. The evening was in full swing when Dad clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. It's time for the family toast, he announced, beaming with pride. My stomach dropped. I hadn't prepared anything, but before I could protest, Mom was dragging me towards the stage. I stumbled after my parents, feeling like a lamb being led to slaughter. Dad started the speech, his voice thick with emotion. Tom, Sarah, we couldn't be prouder. Your love is an inspiration to us all. Mom chimed in. We've always been a close-knit family, supporting each other through thick and thin. I stood there, trying to keep a neutral expression, wondering what alternate reality they were living in. Then Dad dropped the bomb. In fact, we love Tom so much that we took out a substantial loan to pay for this beautiful wedding. Wait, what? I thought they'd refuse to pay for the destination wedding. But Dad wasn't finished. Of course we won't be paying back that loan ourselves. No, our wonderful daughter Eva has generously offered to cover it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I felt all the blood drain from my face as every eye in the room turned to me. What? I stammered, my voice echoing through the microphone. There must be some mistake. I never agreed to that. Mom's hand clamped down on my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin. Smile and agree, dear, she hissed through clenched teeth. But I was done playing along. I wrenched my arm free and stepped up to the microphone. I'm sorry, but this is the first I'm hearing about any loan. I never agreed to pay for Tom's wedding. The room erupted into shocked whispers. I saw Tom and Sarah exchanging panicked glances. Eva, darling, Mom said, her voice sickly sweet as she tried to salvage the situation. Don't be modest. We all know how generous you are with your inheritance. That was the last straw. Generous? You mean the inheritance you all tried to guilt me out of? The one you said I didn't deserve. Dad tried to grab the microphone, but I held on tight. I'm sorry, but I won't be paying for this wedding. I wasn't even consulted about it. You ungrateful little bastard, Dad snarled, forgetting the microphone was still on. His words echoed through the ballroom, causing several guests to gasp. Mom's carefully cultivated mask of politeness crumbled. We should have thrown you out on the street years ago. You're worthless, you hear me? Worthless. I stood there, shock and hurt warring inside me. Then, a calm settled over me. Without another word, I handed the microphone to the wide-eyed DJ and walked off the stage. As I made my way through the stunned crowd, I heard my parents' voices behind me, alternating between apologies to the guests and more insults hurled at my back. I made it to my car before the tears started. As I drove home, my phone exploded with messages, some supportive, most accusatory. I blocked them all. At home, I double-locked the door and sank to the floor, my mind reeling. Had this all been a setup? Had Tom's apology just been a ploy to get me to pay for his wedding? I felt sick, betrayed, angry, but underneath it all, there was a small spark of relief. The mask had finally come off. There was no more pretending, no more hoping for a family that clearly didn't want me. I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My eyes were puffy from crying, and my head pounded with the mother of all headaches. I was contemplating spending the entire day in bed when there was a knock at the door. Peering through the peephole, I was shocked to see Tom standing there, looking as rough as I felt. Eva, please, he called through the door. I've been trying to reach you all night. Can we talk? Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell, but curiosity won out. I opened the door a crack, eyeing him warily. What do you want, Tom? He held up his hands in surrender, to apologize, and explain. Please, can I come in? Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat at my small kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee between us like a peace offering. I swear to you, Eva, I had no idea about Mom and Dad's plan, Tom began, his voice thick with emotion. When you stormed out, I confronted them. It was ugly. I snorted. Yeah, I bet. No, you don't understand, Tom insisted. Sarah and I, we never asked them for money. We were paying for the wedding ourselves. This whole loan thing, it was all their idea. They wanted to look good in front of Sarah's family. I felt a weight lift off my chest. So you didn't set you up? God, no, Eva. I meant what I said before the wedding. I want to make things right between us. As Tom talked, I saw a side of him I'd never seen before. He told me about how Sarah had opened his eyes to how dysfunctional our family was, how her parents treated their children with love and respect, not as pawns in some social climbing game. Sarah's parents are loaded, Tom said with a wry smile. But you'd never know it. They're the most down-to-earth people I've ever met. When they heard what happened, they offered to pay off Mom and Dad's loan. What? No, they can't do that, I protested. Tom held up a hand. Don't worry, I'm going to pay them back, every cent. But they wanted to do this for us, to give us a chance to start fresh without Mom and Dad's drama hanging over our heads. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but for once they weren't tears of frustration or anger. So what now, I asked. Tom reached across the table and took my hand. Now we start over. As a real family. Sarah and I want you in our lives, Eva. No strings attached. We talked for hours, really talked, for what felt like the first time in our lives. By the time Tom left, I felt like I'd gotten my brother back. The next few months were a whirlwind. I landed a job at a marketing firm, throwing myself into work with a passion I never knew I had. Tom and Sarah became regular fixtures in my life, dropping by for dinner or movie nights. One sunny afternoon, Tom and Sarah showed up at my door with matching grins. "We have news," Sarah said, practically bouncing with excitement. "You're going to be an aunt." I squealed and pulled them both into a hug. As we celebrated, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. Our parents tried to worm their way back into our lives when they heard about the baby, but Tom and I stood firm. We were done with their manipulation and drama. It wasn't easy, cutting them out, but we had each other now. And sometimes, the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into.